One of the more popular fish to chase here in the Midwest during the springtime are crappie. Crappie tend to move up into shallower water to prepare for spawning based on water temperatures. Most years in the Midwest, at least in southern Michigan where I live, this typically starts to happen in the May timeframe. But not all years are equal, and 2024 is certainly an exception to the rule. So in this video, I'm going to show you how you can use water temperature to locate and catch these big spring crappie. So stick around. So the strategy that I found works best this time of year is to simply just monitor the water temperature and follow the warmer water. On this particular day that I went out fishing with my dad, we started out over some deep water in a basin on this lake we were fishing. Lake depth was around 20 feet, and we noticed that the surface temperature of the water was right around 54 degrees. So with the main lake surface temperatures already being in the mid-50s, we figured it made a lot of sense that the creeks and rivers flowing into this inland lake would likely be quite a bit higher than that, and it was likely that that's where the fish were going to be. And so we started moving towards one of the bigger feeder creeks on this body of water. Now, the technique we're using here is called spider rigging. I've done one or two videos on this. I'll drop links in the description to this technique, but it's a great way to explore a lot of open water very quickly. Basically, we're just slow trolling through this water while dragging some jigs with plastics at various depths. And so all we're doing here is monitoring water temperature as we approach this creek bed. Kind of weaving back and forth to try to, come into the creek in about the center because this creek is fairly shallow. And it was our first time fishing here. We had never fished this area before. So we're just kind of making sure that we keep the boat floating, not knowing exactly how shallow it was going to get up in here, but just watching that monitoring that water temperature. And we got more and more convinced that we were going to have success as we saw that temperature come up higher and higher. So as we pushed back up into this creek bed, one of the things that we noticed is that the water temperature came up pretty significantly, as we thought it might. And by the time we got back into where we're fishing here, the water temperature was 58 degrees, which is the perfect spawning temperature for crappie. So because the water was so warm, we had decided, and we had heard some fish splashing right up in the brush along the shore, which is an indication that there's spawning fish present. We decided to switch over to a bobber presentation with jigs. And in the process of doing so, we pulled up most of our lines. We left a couple of the spider rigging rods in, a couple of the longer rods. And as we were trying to, get our new rig set up, there's a fish on the rod to the right. And you'll see he'll pull here for a minute or so before we actually pay attention and see it. So this was our first fish of the day, and it was a doozy. It was a big white crappie, and suddenly we got real excited that we were finally onto something here, and we're looking forward to catching a few more fish. So as I mentioned earlier, when crappie are looking for spawning cover, they try to find water that's shallow, water that's generally protected from the wind and waves, so the surface isn't usually disturbed very much. And that's why these back bays and creeks are ideal. And then, of course, the last thing they look for is structure and shade. They don't want to be disturbed from things like predator birds and things like that that are overhead, and that something that's over the top of the water gives them that sense of security. So when you know you're in an area where crappie are spawning, the prime spots are to find areas where there's something on the surface. Maybe it's a big log, maybe it's an overhanging tree, maybe it's a dock in some cases. And in this particular area, this little floating mass of twigs and debris was a perfect spot. And we knew there was a good chance we'd find some fish under here. And we weren't disappointed.
Oh my goodness. Is that a crappie?
Yeah.
You sure? Oh man, look at that thing. Wow.
So this one turned out to be our biggest fish of the day. This one was right at 14 inches, which is a real nice crappie, especially for Michigan. You know, the further north you go, crappie tend to grow slower than they do in the south. So they'll get big. It just takes them a lot longer to get there. It takes them quite a few more growing seasons than it does in the south. So there just aren't as many of them. So when you catch one like this, you know, it's a rare one. And it does qualify. 14 inches in Michigan, at least, is the minimum requirement for a master angler. And so this one certainly qualifies. So we kept fishing and caught a few small ones that we released. And then when we were coming down the other side of the creek here, we came across this downed tree. And once again, you know, it's a prime spot, and the prime spots tend to be dominated by the larger fish. And I'll apologize in advance for the smudge on my camera for this next clip.
Oh yeah, there you go. It's all right. Let's get the fish in the boat, and then we'll get the limp.
So just another nice solid crappie. I think this one again went 13 inches. And, you know, you wonder where these fish go during the summertime. They can be scattered and harder to find. But in the springtime, if you follow this pattern, you know, follow the water temperatures. And when that inshore water temperature starts to get in that mid to upper 50s, you know, that's when it's time to start targeting these shallow areas around these overhanging limbs and logs and things. And you'll definitely be rewarded. So if you get out there this spring, comment back and let us know how you did. And the more information we all share with each other, the better fishermen we all become. Thanks for watching.